So hello everybody, welcome back to the Game House. Now we know that esports is exploding overall. The numbers are insane. You have major professional organizations that are getting investment in the not just millions, but they're getting tens of millions of dollars invested into their operations to expand their market reach. And so I come from a background that is before the internet. I've watched professional sports, baseball, football, basketball grow from something that you watched on TV on Saturdays for a couple hours to a 24/7 thing. And you watch the salaries of these players go from 500,000 to $1 million to 5 million to 10 million. And now you have Bryce Harper who's making over $30 million a year. So how does that happen? How does esports get to that level that we think can happen? How does that happen? And so I strongly believe that the people that we tune in to see, the competitors, need some sort of representation, and that sort of flies in the face at times of the culture, because gamers, streamers are seeing, they love the control that they get over their own careers. But then to sign with an organization, do you understand the terms of the contract? Are you getting a fair wage? Do you have enough to support yourself while you are working for this organization? And I found this company online. These two gentlemen connected with me on LinkedIn, and you see the logo on the screen right there in front of you. And I want these guys to introduce themselves here in a second. But I also want everyone to understand that, you know, we're using older thought processes, I guess is a good word, an older thought process on a new idea is not a bad thing. And while we might have a problem with the past, the lessons of our future are sitting right there in our past. So I have with me the two founders of, I guess you'll call it, an esports agency. You see the logo on the screen right there. So I have with me Antonio and Victor. They're going to introduce themselves right now. So guys, go ahead.
Well, Bill, thanks for having us. We totally appreciate it. We are BrandyRo Gaming. My name is Victor, and this is my partner Antonio. We'll give you guys a little bit of breakdown of kind of where we're coming from. We are a full-service esports athlete representation company. And our background is we spent, collectively over 40 years, over 2 decades each in traditional American sports, specifically in the athlete representation side of it. And so early on, we've always been gamers. I mean, not at the professional level. Always loved video games. I mean, I remember spending more time in college playing video games than I did studying. And so that was always the thing. I was a big NBA 2K Live. What is it? No, it was NBA Live back then. NBA Live player. And anyway, so we've always enjoyed esports. Towards the tail end of our career in the traditional sports is when a lot of traditional sports entities started investing in esports, and it got us really curious, because anytime someone higher up in our industry did anything, it was big news. So we wanted to know why. And for me personally, I mean, I had some teenagers, and my teens are heavy gamers as well. So I got really curious. And so we started kind of looking into the business side of it. And it reminded us of the infancy of traditional sports, baseball, basketball, football. When money was when the industries were growing, revenues were growing, but player salaries were kind of remaining stagnant. And so we kind of saw similarities to that. I mean, we got to enjoy our careers during, the fruits, the movement to change that. So, I mean, when I was there, players are making $100, $200 million, $300 million contracts, because it was always a reflection of the overall health of the industry, of revenues that were coming in. And so we decided that as we were moving on in our career, we would want to bring some of our influence, our experience into the esports space, not because we were looking to jump in and ride the bandwagon, but because it was something of interest, something we both, but also we saw, we have this experience. How can we, and I wanted to do something next in my career that would help. And so that's kind of how we came together to form BrandyRo Gaming. And I think Antonio can speak to that as well from his perspective.
Yeah, so for me, same thing as Victor alluded to earlier, our interest in the space emanated from an innate love for gaming. And as our respective careers started to blossom, it was less time for gaming, more time for working. But there were times when both of us weren't playing games online, but literally Victor and I are talking on the phone. We're both at our homes, and we're talking on the phone, talking about maneuvers during a game. We're playing the same game at the same time. So we have a great love for gaming, and to be able to be a part of the gaming culture and also act as in an advocacy role was something that was very interesting for Victor and myself. It allows us to put a lot of the relationships that we have fostered and cultivated in our traditional sports world. It allows us to leverage some of those relationships. And it also allows, it's an area that kind of scratches both itches for Victor and I in terms of bringing some of that traditional experience to the forefront and allowing that to guide us as we look to work in an advocacy role. But it also represents a new frontier, so to speak. And anyone that works in the sports world will tell you that one of the things that it's a very unpredictable space. And sometimes it can be volatile. But if you're going to have, if you're going to enjoy the amount of time that Victor and I have enjoyed in the space, you have to be able to move with that volatility, move with that unpredictable nature, and embrace it. And so being in the esports space allows us to have some of that unpredictability that we have grown accustomed to, and we flourish in our respective roles in sports, and it allows us to kind of be able to address that need for Victor and I as well.
Okay, so one of the things that you just said, Antonio, really caught my ear. You talked about how esports is extremely unpredictable, and that unpredictability, it's very volatile. You could be on a roster for 1 week, 1 month, and the next, you go to an event, you don't play as well as you thought you could, and then all of a sudden the organization decides to let you go, or and this is a lot more common than people realize. You sign a contract, you are told you're going to be paid a certain amount per month and certain costs will be covered, and you do your job, and then that support, those funds aren't there. That unpredictability that you're talking about has led to people making bad decisions, a lot of mistrust between gamers who have the skill, want to do this, want to be able to be a professional player, yet the structure of some of these organizations is such that they're here for 1 month, 3 months, and then one day they just decide that they're not going to pay everybody. So how do you cultivate trust that if a gamer signs with you, and whether his contract says he gets $500 a month or $5,000 a month, how do you cultivate the trust with that gamer when they say, hey, they said they were going to give me this, give me this amount. You saw the contract, we signed it, and now they're not paying me. So how do you get them to believe in you, where you say, you sign with me, and if something is screwed up, then I'll take care of it?
Well,
I think one of the things for me is we and Victor can attest to this. When you're in the sports world, whether that's traditional sports or esports, when you're in the sports world, we are actually in the relationship business.
Right.
And it's just wrapped in sports. So it is incumbent upon us to make sure that if a player selects us as their advocate and we are there, we look at the way Victor and I look at working with players, casters, coaches, etc. is we look at it as a partnership, and you are just as much in charge of your career and the growth and the development of it just as much as we are. And we are partnered with you, and it's not a sort of bureaucratic relationship where we're looking down on you. So with that, with the red tape and the bureaucracy removed, our whoever we enter into an advocacy agreement with, they will have direct lines of communication with us. And with the relationship building that we will look to lean on, they will know that we are certainly we are deeply invested in their best interests. And so that also sort of guides the way that we look externally when we are looking for other partners to build the platform of our of the people that we represent, and knowing the track records of the external partners, because one of the things that you see in basketball, for example, sometimes when players from the United States go to play professionally abroad, there are the representation of that player has to make sure that they have their player in a good situation, meaning that all of the things that were agreed upon in the contract are delivered, and the external partner, the team that player is signing with, delivers on the promises that were made in writing in that contract. And that's one of the things that, again, with our experience with building relationships and understanding that we are in the relationship business, and understanding that, keenly understanding that, I think that provides a safeguard for the people that we would enter into an advocacy partnership with. I think that's a big part of our strategy, and a big part of that's at the core of, forget the business aspect, that's at the core of our character. And I say that for Victor and myself.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And so for me, the biggest thing, going back to your question, Bill, the thing is, being an advocate, yes, it is a relationship business, but it's all, our role to make sure that those deliverables that are actually, delivered, but also that we're dealing with, it's not just about having a player sign or client sign a contract. It's about understanding who they're signing it with. It's our job to do because if a player signs a contract and the money's not there a month in, and the deliverables aren't being adhered to, then that's our job, and we would never sign a player. Like, this is the thing. It's professional esports, right?
Right.
If an organization is not going to conduct themselves in a professional manner, then we're not steering our clients in their direction. Because if you want to be a professional, then you've got to bring your business to that level. And because of because of where things are right now in esports, that might not be possible for every organization. And there might be some organizations that are faking. And our job is to make sure that we do the research, so that our clients are protected. And again, it goes back to the core. Our core job is to be an advocate, to be a resource for our clients to make the right. And so, does that answer kind of your question of how do you protect clients? Well, we protect them by making sure that they're signing contracts, that we're going through the contracts with a fine-tooth comb, so making sure that what's being is something that can actually be delivered.
Sure. So I guess the question that I asked you, I guess I didn't ask it very well. What I'm saying is this. So as a new company, and you're stepping into a space where players and streamers generally like to handle their own business, and there are some who can appreciate. There are definitely some who can appreciate the fact that they need smart people around them. They need good people who will look out for them. But I don't think that some players and streamers really understand the business aspect of gaming and esports. And so you're going to say to them, hey, you signed the contract, and whatever your fee is, 2%, 5%, 3%, whatever that fee is, whether it's per deal sign or if there's an upfront agreement or whatever, is that you're asking them to give up some of their income in return for your services. Yet there is an ongoing trust issue that I see among organizations and gamers, orgs not paying their players, people promising to represent the streamer and the player, but not handling business in the most ethical way. So I guess my question is, how do you, Victor, and you, Antonio, how do you walk into a room, how do you drop into a stream and say to the streamer, or when you reach out, hi, this is who I am, and I think you have the potential, or your organization has the potential to really take it to the next level. This is what I do, and I want to represent you.
Yeah, well, this goes back to, and I'll give you a little bit of background on, we talked about my time in baseball. And
right.
So you don't necessarily, the way you're presenting is kind of a bit of a cold call, right?
Yes.
When you meet with a player, it's a relationship business. And if the way I treated recruiting a player, I wouldn't cold call them. It's kind of like building a relationship. You see someone across, that person catches your eye.
Right.
You don't go over there coldly. You kind of try to warm in there, at least get an opening to a conversation. And from that conversation, you're trying to build a little bit of trust, that this is someone that they can trust to have a continued conversation. And those conversations are going to, exactly like you said, we think that you have this ability to this player in your career. Here's how we can help you. And we start going into details as to, how do you conduct your business now? And what are some of the challenges that you've had? And how can we alleviate some of those challenges? And what do we bring to the table that can help you? And yes, in the agent business in traditional sports, there is a fee, because obviously it's you hire a lawyer, you pay
right.
them a fee to do their job.
Right.
Now, for us, it's not about the fee. It's about what can we bring to you to help your career, to help you focus. And yeah, like you said, a lot of people might want to handle their own business. Our business model for someone, for everyone, but it doesn't also work for someone who wants to handle their business, because for me, here's the thing: if you're handling, that takes time, right? That takes a lot of time. So where's that time? That's taking away time from your craft. So we want you to focus on your craft. The whole purpose of an agent, of a representative, of an advocate, is to give you back time that you're dedicating to your craft to get better. Similar to a baseball player, similar to a basketball player, to a football player. If you're spending time doing your business, that's time that you're taking away from resting, right? From conditioning, from having a personal life with family, right? So we want you to have everything in order and let us alleviate some of that constriction.
Nice. Okay. So I just want to stop right there for a second. I want everybody to understand the value proposition that just passed them by. This is about time, and the more time you're on stream, the more time that you're running scrims, the more time that you're working on your craft, the better off you are. That means if you're managing your social media account, you're not practicing. That means that if you're talking to a sponsor to sign a deal, you're not practicing, you're not streaming, you're not in front of your fans. So I just want everybody to understand that. Now,
and hold on one second, Bill, before you move on to your next question.
Sure, go ahead.
The other thing that I want to really illustrate as well, and Victor alluded to that, the resting part is also big. That's also very important to us. It's not just, we don't want to present ourselves as an entity that, yes, we will remove all of the restrictions off of your time and it becomes kill and drill. All you do is practice.
Right,
the
right.
Health and wellness and rest aspect is very big for us as well. I wanted to make sure that I touched on that.
Yes, and that's important. Is that you can only grind so much, and pretty soon after you're grinding, the only thing that you're actually grinding down is yourself, because you have to rest. You have to take the time to get away from the keyboard and go outside and see the sun once in a while, if you know what I mean. Right.
Well, and Bill, that's
a well-rounded person.
Right, and then Bill, that's a good portion of this conversation that I think we should focus on. And here's really quick.
Okay.
So and this goes back to what you were saying about players who are going to have a hard time seeing why they need someone when they handle their own business. Well, here's the deal: in esports, it's a little bit different again because it's a growing industry when it comes to the business side of it, and traditional. But in traditional sports, in your contracts, it's determined and spelled out when you're expected to provide services to your employer, to the team.
Right.
So what we're seeing now is there's a buzz going around where players will sign to these organizations and it's 24. Well, that's why someone like us, like BrandyRo Gaming, is of value, because we bring a perspective that isn't prevalent in the industry, right? That some of these contracts should have certain clauses to it, whether that's a health and wellness portion, whether that's marketing and use of your likeness and who owns that likeness and things like that.
Right.
Those are items that aren't as prevalent across the industry from the business side of it, but it's something that we bring to the table because they're very our world. Right.
And I think that I think that gamers don't really understand that is that you need to have an off season. So this actually takes me to one of the points I wanted to talk about. Excuse me. So in professional organized sports, baseball, basketball, football, you have a defined season. So in baseball, I think it's February 14th, around maybe February 20th is when
Spring training.
Yeah, so spring training starts and the pitchers and catchers report. Now, that date is collectively bargained between Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball Players Association. That date is written into their collective agreement. Esports doesn't have a union. And so right now there's a big, I won't say big, there's a conversation going around, especially with the Overwatch League right now, is that players haven't come together and decided to form a players association. There's a definite upside to that. There's also a downside to that, because you're centralizing we are centralizing the authority of the players to operate, but you're also centralizing the point at which the league has to operate. So it creates a structure, it creates a bottleneck that is both good and bad from both sides of the equation. You know what I'm saying there?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. No, totally understand. And honestly, I think that's a much deeper conversation in terms of collective and
Right.
in that aspect of it. But here's the thing: you even have professional sports in the U.S. and it's an international one, but MMA is the same struggle. They don't have a PA.
Right.
Each sport has kind of their own ecosystem. The uniqueness of esports, and Antonio will speak to this, is that each game is its own ecosystem. So that's going to make it very difficult to have one centralized. But again, that's more of a long-term view than.
Right.
I just think, Antonio, you can touch on this because I know this is a topic that you've that you're much well versed in terms of the different ecosystems to each game and what that means. Antonio? Sorry.
Right. Yeah, it's exactly what Victor said. I mean, there's a different ecosystem for every game that trickles all the way down to the grassroots level. That's something that we are very sensitive to, and something that we certainly respect, with us being gamers at heart. And the other thing with that is the ecosystem is also, once you get to the professional level, that ecosystem is now sort of dictated as well by just how successful the game is itself, in terms of with people buying the game, the amount of streams it gets, the amount of watches the amount of eyes that it gets when they are streaming competitions, all of those things, sponsorship deals that come with that, all of that sort of dictates the ecosystem of the game, as well as we start to grow the esports platform as a whole. And so we are very sensitive to that, especially given the fact that primarily Victor's background is in baseball. My background is in basketball primarily. And, to give you an example, Victor and I both work on in financial management for and professional sports. Victor primarily on the baseball side. I was charged with building the basketball portion, and even though a lot of the challenges and a lot of the things that a professional baseball player will encounter from a financial standpoint, those mirror what a basketball player would also encounter, even though those financial ramifications, those financial challenges, those benefits, whatever it is from a financial standpoint, are all the same. How each player got to that point is totally dictated by his ecosystem. And there are some things that when you go to speak to a baseball player, if you bring some of that, because of how the collective bargaining agreement is structured in basketball, in terms of big example, basketball, we have a soft cap,
Right.
meaning that to retain your own players, you can circumvent that cap. In baseball, there is no cap.
Right.
So with that, the way that you would recruit a player, the way that you would structure a contract, all of that's, even though the financial issues are sort of the same, the way that you would navigate that space in terms of baseball and basketball is different, and it's dictated by the collective bargaining agreement. And so knowing that we see that same similarity in esports, and knowing that, embracing that, having experience in that is something that Victor and I feel separates us from maybe some other advocacy agencies out there.
So I think.
Well, here's the deal. Before we move on, Bill, in an industry where there is no collective bargaining agreement, collective bargaining agreement, or collectively bargained like central organization,
Right.
like a players association. It's the responsibility of the agents, of the representatives, to make sure that the players they're representing are protected. So here's why I think me and Antonio really wanted to get into this space. Right now, you have attorneys, you have other advocates in the space with no professional sports business background, so their level of understanding, like for example, okay, Bill, you're a baseball fan. Did you know some of the intricacies that are in a baseball contract in terms of how much you can actually time you have to give to your employer? What does that mean on the marketing? So my point is that sometimes someone who's seen it from the periphery won't know the details. So when they're in this space now in esports, they don't know that, we have to negotiate these things into the contract because there's no standardized contract, because there's no player. So for us being able to bring that in, one of the biggest things is I can see in our negotiations, we see this contract, but there's no health and wellness portion. There's no who owns the rights to my player's gamer tag and things like that.
Right, exactly.
And so that's one that I think is more common, but there will be other things that we are bringing from our world because we're just experienced with dealing with those kinds of issues and items. And like I said, it's the responsibility of the advocates to make sure that in a world, in a space, in an industry where there's lacking protections for the players, that you instituted player. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think, it's hard. It's really hard to get gamers to understand how an agent works because they haven't seen the growth of other professional sports over time. And when you combine that with the fact that each individual genre and also each individual game is technically its own professional sport. So you could have a Rainbow Six team, you could have a Call of Duty team. Yes, those are first-person shooters, but they're completely different games. They're completely right. So you can have a professional Rainbow Six squad. Does the talent transfer to COD in some instances? But you don't see people crossing over all the time. And then when you combine that with the fact that you're not going to treat a professional Street Fighter player the same way that you treat somebody who plays Rainbow Six, it's two completely different ecosystems on top of it. So, I mean, while the fragmentation of esports is good in some ways because there's a bunch of opportunity, the fragmentation leads to it leads to wildly different norms, expectations, overall thought processes, because if you're a professional Street Fighter player, it's you. That's all there is to it. You can do pretty much anything that you want because you're only basically responsible to yourself and your organization. But if you're playing Call of Duty and you're on a team, you are responsible not only to the org but to the other players on your squad. You have to be available when it's time to scrim, when it's time to plan for an event, when it's time to run schedules. So there's a lot to this that I don't think people understand, and they see esports as this massive industry. I'm like, yeah, but the silos don't touch. Somebody who plays StarCraft is inherently different than somebody who plays Call of Duty, Rainbow Six, regardless of calling yourself a professional gamer, which is fine. The norms, the expectations, the even the cash. Now, this gets into the conversation that you and I, that we all had before we started this. Is that we're talking about the NBA 2K League. Now, when that started, you're getting guaranteed salaries, you're getting, housing, you're getting food, you're getting all this promotion, you're getting all this opportunity, but $30,000. Now, that might sound good because we're very early in the process, but what you have is the 2K League adding teams all the time. We just had the draft, a bunch of new players. How does the 2K League compare to Overwatch when it comes to salaries? Is it even possible to compare them? Can you compare them? Are those ecosystems comparable? I mean, there's like so many permutations to this that I don't think people understand. Just because an NBA 2K player makes $30,000 a year and a professional Overwatch squad, maybe one guy makes, say, 75,000. I don't even know if that's true, but say that they make 75,000, and your client who's in 2K comes to you and goes, well, wait a minute, how come the guys in Overwatch are getting 75K and I'm only getting, there's so much to this. It's extremely complicated. So when you talk about ecosystems, how do you navigate that?
Well, here's the thing. It's kind of like in traditional sports, right? You have your agencies that focus on, specific sport. Then you have agencies that have multiple sports. And I think it's the same way where, you'll have your basketball players wondering why a baseball player will make $300 million. Well, it's a different ecosystem. The economics of each sport is different. And I think that's the way we see esports. Each is within its own ecosystem, and the economics of it require, you have to do a study. You have to make sure you follow the investment, the money, the revenue that's coming into the individual sport, to the individual game, because that's what's going to dictate where, how it all gets divvied up. And so for me, that's the biggest thing. It's making sure that you have advocates that are well versed in understanding each individual ecosystem. And yeah, you might have some clients who will be like, well, why are they making that over there? Well, you have to kind of stay in your lane. If you want to, if you can get to the level, if you can be a two-sport player in the traditional, great. But when the economics get to the point where you just have to pick one, you got to pick one and you got to live with it. And so that's kind of, that's a perspective we bring to the industry. And, to back up a little bit, I know you mentioned a lot of gamers might have a hard time understanding the role of an agent in this space. I kind of, this is just from mine and Antonio's time so far.
Right.
I beg to differ, because I find that a lot of the calls we're getting, our phone has been from people who are interested because they see the sports background.
Okay.
So we have a lot of gamers because of that in sports, in traditional sports. They're traditional sports. They're curious. They're like, wait a second, I understand how agents work in traditional sports. What does this mean for us? So it creates a curiosity. And so I think our background really helps us in creating that question moment,
Nice.
And that allows us to enter these conversations and explain what we can do in this space. Because if we came into this as an attorney, well, okay, I don't understand. What are you guys going to do here? Well, no, the conversations we're having is like, hey, we heard about you guys. We see your background. We're curious. One of the first conversations we had with a potential client was he was a sports fan, and he wanted to know more. Like, wait, I'm curious. I know exactly how it works in traditional sports. How do you guys plan on making it work here?
Right.
And that's a totally different.
Nice. Okay. This is great conversation, guys. I really appreciate you're making time for me. I feel like that we could probably do this again at some point. I would really like to get into some of the deeper weeds when it comes to thought processes behind, how you structure contracts in certain ways, how you deal with individual, or how you deal with orgs in general, and then larger leagues, and then perhaps the deeper conversation of the collective bargaining process. So I think I really think that this is something that people need to hear. I am all for you guys doing exactly what you're doing. The space needs it. More than a lot of people know. I'm very glad that people are reaching out to you, realizing the shortcomings that they have, and if they want to turn themselves into a full-on brand, a professional player, that they're getting smart people on your side. So as we shut this down, guys, so is there anything that you want to promote? Your own site, your own own a own Twitter feed or anything?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I obviously encourage everyone to visit our website.com to learn a little bit more about us individually, about the company. But we're also on Facebook, Twitter. It's at BrandyRo Gaming. We also have a Twitch page, which obviously one of the best parts of being in this space is now we can kind of like when we were in sports. It's funny because as someone who doesn't work in sports, you go on ESPN, you have to limit that while you're at work. So for us, going on ESPN and reading about sports was part of the job. So now part of the job is being able to play video games. So we've got a Twitch page. We'll stream on there every now and then. We'll probably focus on some sports games just to kind of get our feet wet a little bit.
Right.
We'll follow us on there. Reach out to us. Our contact information is on our website or even through our social media. And like I said, we've been very busy having a lot of conversations, and we hope to continue those conversations.
Very nice, very nice. And I give out this piece of advice often because I think it's overlooked. Get on LinkedIn. If you want to be a professional gamer, get on LinkedIn. These guys are on LinkedIn. I'll make sure to put all these links, the site, the social medias, and the LinkedIn profiles in the description below. Get on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is an underrated tool in the esports world. If you don't know how to use it or the value, feel free to reach out to me. I have found a ton of value on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great place to be. Guys, thank you very, very, very much for making time for me today. Guys, head over to BrandyRoGaming.com at BrandyRo Gaming on Twitter. Thank you very, very much, guys. If you like this interview and the other videos that we do here at the Game House, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, drop some likes and shares, and we'll see you soon.